to my Somali homies, love them till this day. And they would sometimes crack jokes, say, "Hey, how come you hang out with other groups?" Because everybody in high school had their own group, their own tribe, right? Always had this curiosity of maybe maybe I'm gonna step out the box. I'm gonna hang out with people that don't look like me. Moved from San Diego, California, where all my friends and family are at, all the way to Orlando, Florida, right? People that I talked to about that decision, Ben, they said, "What are you doing? Don't do it. You're leaving your family, you're leaving your culture, you're leaving your people. Don't do it." Throughout my life, that's been a theme of doing what could be considered to a degree unconventional. This accumulation of experiences that has allowed me to speak freely on stage. That has allowed me to take on career opportunities and move, right, with minimal friction upon internally for myself, right. Still you can still be a part of your culture, be a part of your community, and still, step out the little box that the world has created for you.
Welcome back to B2S. I'm your host, Ben Arthur. Excited to be joined this week by Abdie Mohamed. So he is a Somali-American public speaker, or professional speaker, I should say, and a cybersecurity expert. He works in Atlanta. He works at Lockheed Martin as a lead cloud governance engineer, and he is also a part-time board member at the Hidden Genius Project, helping to train and mentor Black male youth in STEM, entrepreneurship, and leadership. Abdi, thank you so much for your time, bro. How's everything going?
My man, Ben, I'm blessed. Praise God, man. Happy to be here. And yeah, I'm a proud Somali American who's excited to share some of his life lessons growing up here in the
Absolutely.
United States of America.
Absolutely. Let's get into it, right? So just to kind of start, right, those watching and listening are being introduced to you for the first time. So what is it that they need to know about your cultural context at home to understand the man that you are in this moment?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up. My family's from Somalia. We they immigrated here in the middle '90s, and I was born not that long after. So I'm from San Diego, California. My upbringing was pretty awesome. I gotta say, it was awesome. The reason why I say awesome is because I grew up with two parents who were very, very loving, and they did everything they can to make sure I turned out just okay. And growing up, definitely, I had a bunch of siblings too. So I have eight siblings. I'm the
Oh,
second
wow.
oldest. Yeah, I'm the second
Okay.
oldest, firstborn son, and I have seven sisters. So you can imagine growing up, right? Living with, with a house that keeps expanding over the years as you're growing up, right? There's a lot of lessons learned there, a lot of hierarchies, right? Got to fight over who's getting the last bag of chips, who's getting the last cup of cereal. And growing up with that many siblings, it was very humbling. And I remember always being reminded by my mom whenever I made a bad decision. She said, "Hey, your younger siblings are watching. They're following you." As a
Mhm.
child or as a teenager, that stuff was annoying. That stuff was annoying, man. That was very annoying. But it was a valuable lesson of leadership. You know, whether you like it or not, you're a role model to somebody. You do with that what you will, right?
Yeah.
So growing up, I learned a lot about that. My dad was always very big on being kind. He still is, still is very big on being kind, being compassionate. He taught me a lot growing up about anger management. I used to have a lot of anger management issues as a teenager. Probably watched too much anime and music videos. But yeah, there's that. And I played a lot of violent, like Mortal Kombat video games and Dragon
Okay.
Ball.
I got
And
it.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, my upbringing, it was fun. It was very enjoyable. A lot of lessons learned. I mean, I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience can relate in trying to navigate that line of, you know, you're African who's grown up in the States, but black folks might not recognize you as one of them, and your people who were born back home might not recognize you as much as one of them.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
remember, at times, grappling with. with, like, why are my Somali friends giving me a hard time for not speaking the language as good as them? I was born here. I was born here. I mean, I speak the
Yeah.
language, right? But I was born here. But for my friends that are born back home who spent years living back home, understanding, learning the mother tongue and being immersed in that, right? Sometimes I'd get jokes and they meant well. They didn't I don't think they meant harm, but the jokes would be, oh, he doesn't know the language or the mother tongue really well. So it's this thing of, well, you're not American enough. You're not Somali enough. You're in this weird area where you're kind of
Yeah.
tiptoeing in between,
That's
trying to
my
find a
entire
form
life,
of
bro.
acceptance.
That's my entire life.
Yeah,
So how
yeah.
so how did you deal with that, right? Maybe I think what you're saying, it was kind of difficult for you. I guess what maybe got you through that, or how did you maybe deal with those challenges when you do feel like you don't feel like you fit in to any one camp, being somewhere in between?
Y- yeah, it's something, especially in high school, you know, shout out to my Somali homies. Love them till this day. And they would sometimes crack jokes, say, "Hey, how come you hang out with other groups?" Because everybody in high school had their own group, their own tribe, right? And we were kind of, to a degree, segregating ourselves. Right? Everybody has their own group in high school, right? And they would make this joke, and they would mock me, like, "Hey, how come you hanging out with all these other people? We're your people. You should hang out with us." And I think I
Mhm.
always, growing up, I always had this curiosity of maybe, maybe I'm gonna step out the box. I'm gonna step out the box. I'm gonna do what most people may not feel comfortable doing. I'm gonna go hang out with people that don't look like me. You know, that has been a theme of my life of going out the box. Like my first job out of college, I moved from San Diego, California, where all my friends and family are at, all the way to Orlando, Florida. Right.
Oh wow.
Most people that I talked to about that decision, Ben, they said, "What are you doing? Don't do it. You're leaving your family, you're leaving your culture, you're leaving your people. Don't do it." Right. So all throughout my life, that's been a theme of doing what could be considered to a degree unconventional. Um, that's been a big theme. And for me, I always had faith in God and faith in myself that, hey, you know, trust that you're making a good decision. Trust that you're making a decision that's going to help you down the line. And because I made that decision to be uncomfortable, right? You know, all throughout middle school and high school and college, breaking the mold, you know, joining organizations on campus, joining a fraternity, right? Doing all these different things that most people would say, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing?"
Mhm.
That all those accumulation of experiences that has allowed me to speak freely on stage. That has allowed me to take on career opportunities and move, right? With minimal friction upon internally for myself, right? I'm able to make these bigger decisions because I was able to break out the mold early on. So for those of you watching, you can still you can still be a part of your culture, be a part of your community, and still, step out the little box that the world has created for you.
I love that message, and that's something I can resonate with so much so because I kind of did a similar thing as you in terms of going to a totally different side of the country. Like I was born and raised in Seattle, and my first job out of college was in Laredo, Texas, on the Mexican border. So you can
Wow.
imagine the conversations I had with folks thinking like, "Oh, why are you going to a border town like this, that, and the third? Like the cartel, this, that, and the third." Like there are a lot of questions raised, but ultimately, like you mentioned, like I grew up so much being there. You really figure out who you are being on your own. And so I think that's such an important message uh, that comes from your experience. But you mentioned that I think there is still that you still have that love for your culture and your heritage, even
Always.
though you did uh, break away in a degree to sort of go after kind of your dreams, goals, whatever. I guess as that has kind of stayed with you, how has that maybe shaped your mindset, right, in terms of how you attack your life, maybe personally, but also work,
Yeah.
business?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So for me, You have to understand, right? I grew up in San Diego. I was born and raised there. That's all I knew for most of my life. So for me to leave that, right? That was a very scary decision. It was a very scary decision. However, you in life, you don't know if things were a great decision or a bad decision until years down the line. You won't know. You won't know. You won't like. Time will have to pass for you to have a non-emotional audit and say, was this a good decision or not? Right. For me, that making decisions like that, making decisions to break away, as scary as they are, that's helped me understand that if you want to be a leader in any vocation, in any profession, in any discipline, you have to be comfortable making uncomfortable decisions. You have to be comfortable with being in environments where you're meeting people from all walks of life and you're interacting with them, not just surface level, right? In a more humane, deeper level, right? I have found the most effective leaders in across any discipline that you could think of. They could be music artists, actors, they could be doctors, NFL coaches, right? Anybody, right? Whatever you could think of. I have found that those who lead at the highest level, they have the ability to see the humanity and build relationships across party lines, across religious lines, across national lines, across ethnic lines, right? And for me, that's the type of person I aspire to be. I aspire to be someone who could touch the hearts of many people and be of service to all of humanity. To be that type of leader, for me, I always had to make sure that, hey, make these tough decisions so you could be a better leader, right? So you're asking me, hey, how has making these tough decisions to, break out of the homogenous community, great community that I have, how does it feel? How does that shape my decisions? How does that shape me today? Well, today I bring that attitude of like, hey, it doesn't matter what room I'm in. I believe I'm able to connect to someone. There's some relatability somewhere. It's only a matter of time where we discover that, and that's what we're going to connect on, right?
Mm.
So for me, making those tough decisions, breaking out of the mold, that allows me to be a better leader. And I think great leaders need to be able to touch anybody, be cool with anybody, learn from anybody.
Abdi, to be who you are now, right? Somewhat of a thought leader in your space, a tech professional, a cybersecurity leader, to be that kind of person of Somali heritage, being of that particular cultural heritage, what does that mean to you?
It feels pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it feels pretty cool. I'm very happy that I could be a source of inspiration to my younger siblings first and foremost, and to a bunch of other teenagers, younger folks, all throughout the country. You know that means a lot. It feels great. It feels great being able to to make an income ethically. It feels great to be able to support my family. It feels great to you know be a part of a small community of you know small community of people who who are doing things and servicing their community, who are taking the profession to the next level and servicing their community along the way. I think I think it's something I don't take very lightly. It's a responsibility that I take very seriously, and it feels great knowing how far I've come, knowing where I've come from, and also being able to impact so many people just by the decisions that I've made. We always hear a quote. I mean, even my mom and dad would tell me this growing up, right? They're watching you, they're following you, whether you like it or not. You're a role model to somebody. And for me, my hope, as someone in my profession, as someone who's in the nonprofit space, my hope is that someone can see me and I could be a source of inspiration for them to take action and make great decisions in their life.
I saw on a podcast, Abdi, from a month or two ago, I think, you
Yeah.
mentioned how self doubt was something you really battled with coming up because you didn't see tech professionals who looked like you. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, being a tech professional now, what has it taken to overcome that self-doubt to become the kind of person that maybe your younger self would have looked up to?
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely had a lot of self-doubt early on because I just didn't see that many folks that looked like me in the tech profession. At least I wasn't aware of them,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure there are folks that look like me that are, first generation, Somali, African American, from all over the world, right? I'm sure they existed, but I wasn't exposed to it much, and early on, the reason why I caught my interest in the tech space was being exposed to one person, and that turned into two, turned into three. A few people that look like me, right? That kind of made it register. Like, oh wait, actually,
Mhm.
we can do this. This is actually possible. I can do it, right? The what I would say to that young man today is that for every level that you go to in life, there's going to be a severe level of uncomfortability. Whenever you're about to reach that next level, you are going to be so uncomfortable. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel unfamiliar, right? Unfamiliar territory. That's what it means to get to the next level. Getting to the next level within any vocation or profession means you are in complete uncomfortable territory, right? I'm going through that right now, actually. I'm going through complete uncomfortable territory right now as we speak.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I can and that's what it means. That's how you know you're getting to that next level where you're completely uncomfortable, like, oh my God, I'm kind of building this plane as I fly it. Right. So I would tell that young Abdi, I'd say, hey, if you wish to continue to grow and evolve and reach the highest pinnacle of holistic success that you want, then understand there's always going to be seasons where you're going to be very uncomfortable, where you're going to feel, oh my God, I don't think I know what I'm doing, right? I would tell that young man, it's very normal to have some doubt. What's not okay is allowing that doubt to cripple you out of action, right? Doubt likes to freeze us, right? You acknowledge the doubt, you acknowledge the negative thoughts. After that, we have to get moving. We have to take some action, right? Because if we don't take any action, right, doubt will eat us alive. And 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years have gone by, and you have allowed doubt to cripple you in place.
Has there ever been a moment where that doubt that you speak about almost crippled you? And if so, like what did it take to like push past that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I was about 8 months into my career. I was living in Florida. COVID just happened.
Oh, bro.
COVID just happened. I went from going into the office talking with everybody to working from home, trying to figure things out as the new guy. And on the job is soul crushing to a degree because I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't have immediate access to all the lead engineers and everybody. Right? It's just different. I don't know how to work from home. It's new, right? I'm learning that, and on top of that, I've just gotten into my master's degree program, and I'm struggling with the curriculum. I'm struggling to write high quality essays, right? Some of that had to do with me procrastinating a bit. I'll admit. That being said, I struggle to write high quality essays in one of my cybersecurity courses. And one time the professor, he just said, hey, I don't know if you're fit for this program because clearly, I'm not seeing any effort on your end. He wasn't wrong for saying that. I believe he was right. And that was my moment where I started to question, like, you know what, he might be right. Maybe I'm not fit for this program. Then I realized we're in the middle of a pandemic. You know, I haven't seen my family in a few months, and I'm not going to see them for another 4-ish 5 months. If you drop out of this program, what's next? I mean, what are you going to do with your time? Like, what was I supposed to do with my time? I went back because the pandemic happened. I mean, I had plans on going back, but me starting immediately, had a lot to do with because of the pandemic.
Mm.
Because hey, I can't go outside, I can't do anything, right? You know, there's all types of stuff happening out in the world. We can't really do much. I'm home most of the day. What are we gonna do with our time then? That's when I had to kick in the gears and say, hey, you got an opportunity to get a master's degree paid for. Most people don't have that privilege. Stop messing around. Start taking it serious. Stop moving like an amateur. Start moving like a professional. And that's how I kind of overcame that moment where I said, "Oh my God, I'm about to drop out," because I contemplated it.
Mm.
But what allowed me to keep going was number one, gratitude and recognizing I'm in a unique position because I'm about to have a master's degree completely paid off by the company
Yeah.
that I'm working with. And number two, it's the pandemic. What else are you gonna do? That like what else are you gonna do? You could drop out of school. That's fine. Okay, what's the alternative? I'm working 45 hours a week. To some people, that's like, oh my God. To some people, it's like, oh, that's light work, right? But I'm working 45 hours a week. After that, then what? Right. So for me, I'm like, okay, this is probably the best use of my time. So I got my affairs in order, and we eventually graduated a few semesters down the line.
Wow. So you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but this was a theme that came up for me when I was going through your LinkedIn, some of the posts you've made about like just some of the previous speaking engagements you've made. And
Yeah.
your message to a lot of the audiences you speak to is just like the importance of developing communication skills, right? Like you got to
Yeah.
know your craft, you have to know your field really well, but you have to be able to communicate that knowledge in a way to where it's relatable or personable or whatever. And I think even in front of one audience, a tech audience, a month or two ago, you said, quote, what was it? Speak tech, talk human, end quote. I guess what was maybe the experience you had that really hammered in the need for you to like really emphasize that message in particular?
Yeah, you definitely have done your reconnaissance and homework, my friend, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, talk text speak human. That I came up with that idea because over time, as I was developing my career, I've ran into personal challenges in which, as an engineer, I'd be talking to someone from HR or finance or operations, someone who's not an engineer, and I'd realize there would be a lot of friction and frustration because I'm not communicating at a level that they in a way that they may understand, not even level, but in a way that they might understand. And I've also had this frustration with engineers, my peers, colleagues, or practitioners across the whole world, in which they are always, not all the time, but sometimes you have a community of engineers and technical practitioners in which they're always making things sound more complicated than they are,
Mhm.
and they're always using all these buzzwords, right? You might sound smart, however, true intelligence is to be able to explain something in the simplest terms in which anyone can understand. That's when you reach the highest level of understanding any subject, right? When you can explain it in a way that anybody can understand. And for me, you know, the communication skills, in my opinion, you can't be a world class engineer if you're not a world class communicator.
Mm.
How could you be the most intelligent engineer, most effective engineer if you can't communicate your ideas across departments within your organization,
Mm.
right? And I've met some of those engineers who I would describe as world class, in which they can. It doesn't matter who you bring in front of them; they can communicate their ideas effectively without trying to sound quote unquote smart. And for me, came up with the idea of talk text speak human, like that whole speech, really, so folks can understand that hey, technology is going to be around for a while. We're going to need to be more technically literate, right? But don't forget you're human at the end of the day. You're not a robot. You see people, Ben, they use Chat GPT or Copilot for their LinkedIn posts or their Instagram posts, right? People can see right through it, right? Your competitive advantage is your humanity, and people see nothing but emojis and M dashes in your posts, in your messages, in your commentary. When people know that you don't talk like that, you're a human being, right? So for me, that speech, that workshop that I did of Talk Tech Speak Human was driving home the point that, hey, technology is important. Being technically literate is very important. However, do not forget that you are a human being. Humans connect through communication. It could be all forms of communication: visual communication, written communication, verbal communication, right? But all this to say, you have to remember that how effective you are within your engineering career, your tech career, will be based off of how well you can communicate your ideas and your value, because that also determines how much money you make, whether you win new business, new partnerships, any idea, any project initiative that you want to do, right? How will you effectively communicate that, right? That will determine your career trajectory. So, yeah, I think for me, communication skills, they're, I don't even call them. It's hard for me to call them soft. They're the hard skills. How do
Yeah.
you communicate an idea that might ruffle some feathers in the room, but how do you make sure you acknowledge that, hey, this idea might is an uncomfortable idea that I have, but I'm gonna communicate that anyways. How do you do that, right? And that's where I think world class engineers, they understand that. They understand how to effectively communicate and influence, which, as you know, boils back to leadership, right? So
Yeah, I think that's such an important message, and not just for engineers, but everyone in general, being able to communicate at a high level. Like you said it right. Like our humanity is our most valuable asset as the AI and all this technology continues to rapidly grow and compound. Like we have to that's where our value is gonna that's why we're gonna stay valuable is if we're those who can nourish and pour into those human skills, so to speak, is going to be more important than ever because it feels like people have forgotten about that, right? Not having
yeah,
those person to person interactions. And speaking of communicating with people, there was another old podcast I saw you on where you talked about how for a lot of people the most growth will come from communicating when you're wrong or admitting acknowledging that you're wrong. And
yeah.
so I'm curious, when was a moment where you were wrong, either in a bad way or publicly wrong, to where you had to acknowledge and admit to it, to where in time that acknowledgement of being wrong actually helped you to grow in that particular domain, or you took that into another facet of your life?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I had a scenario, and this was in my engineering career, where I was told to build a security policy, and I approached an engineer and I said, "Hey, what are you guys doing for what are you guys doing for security for this specific technology called containers?" And I said, "Hey, what are you guys doing for container security?" And I went into that meeting unprepared. The engineer said, "Hey, what do you mean by container security? Because when it comes to securing container technology, there are 3 or 4 different components that go into that." So he asked me a clarifying question. I froze in place, and I told
Mhm.
him I don't know. And I'm glad I told him I didn't know. It was embarrassing, but I'm glad I told him I don't know, because that allowed us to still have some type of healthy working relationship. I told him I'll get back with him, right? We were able to eventually get a container security policy updated and created. However, if I tried to play this game of, oh yeah, I know what containers are, I know how to secure this technology, you need to give me the answers. If I tried to play that game, I believe that would have lost trust with that specific engineer. And trust is not easy to build, and I'll say it's even harder to build trust when you've lost it initially. It's much, much harder, right? So for me, I'm glad I said, I don't know. And I said, hey, let me get back with you on that. So
Mm.
that's one of the many scenarios where admitting I was wrong, or admitting I didn't know something. Because sometimes, you know, you may feel like, hey, if I admit that I don't know something, I very well might get fired, which is far from the truth. But most times we over exaggerate things in our head. But we say, hey, if I admit that I don't know how this things or how this works, what if I lose credibility? Because that's a big fear people have, losing credibility, right? What if you lose the acknowledgement from your peers, your leaders? You lose all trust with them, right? You immediately think by saying I don't know, that's going to happen. But more often than not, that's not what happens. More often than not, you'll probably get a little bit more respect by admitting what you don't know, because that's the first step of learning. That's the first step of growth, is actually acknowledging that, hey, I don't know everything, which is why I'm going to bring my pen and paper and I'll get to studying.
Is it easy though to embrace that mindset? Because I don't know. Speaking from personal experience, there have been times where it's been tough for me to admit I'm wrong because it's almost like you're going against your ego, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that was maybe an issue you dealt with, but like how can people make it easier for themselves, or how can they get disciplined enough to get to a point to where they can acknowledge when they're wrong? Because for a lot of people that is extremely difficult.
Yes, I agree. And I will not act like it's an easy thing to do. Admitting you're wrong is definitely a going against your ego. It's admitting your own shortcomings,
Yeah.
your own incompetence to a degree, right? Admitting you're wrong is you saying that, hey, I see this mirror and I see that there are things in this mirror that I need to fix, that I need to work on. It's one of the hardest things to do. Admitting you're wrong, similar to apologizing, right? Apologizing to a loved one or a family member or a friend when you have made a mistake. It's very hard to do, because to a degree you have to live that experience again and acknowledge that there was some harm or foul or something that you've done wrong. I would tell people, when you are admitting that you don't know something or you're admitting that you are wrong, remember, and this is something I struggle with. I used to think, oh man, I'm a bad person because I don't know this. You are not a bad person. You are not a bad person. You're a human being having a human experience who's on their learning journey. And if you believe that every great person in any vocation, any sport or profession, if you think they didn't have moments where they missed the mark or they had to admit that they weren't good at something, if you think they didn't have that, then you're mistaken, right? Any person who's great at anything, they've had moments where they had to admit that they were no longer they weren't as good as they thought they were, right? You know, LeBron eventually got to the point where during his NBA career where he said he had to hire a chef, right? Kobe got to a point where he had to hire Michael Jordan's old trainer, right? Everybody gets to that point, and you're not a bad person for saying that, you know what, right now what I'm doing is not working. I don't know how this works. You're not a bad person. That's actually, you know, that's actually just a negative voice that we all have in our head that we have to address. And you have to keep telling yourself every time you run into that issue that, hey, I'm not a bad person. This is a good thing. This is a good thing. You have to reframe it and tell yourself this is a good thing, because I'm not going to grow if I don't acknowledge my shortcomings.
I saw on an old Instagram post you made, Abdi, where you said you didn't want to be misconstrued as a motivational speaker. You want to be a thought leader.
Yeah.
I guess what's that difference for you, and why is it so important for you to be the latter as opposed to the former?
When it comes to being a motivational speaker, I do believe that we do need motivational speakers in the world. I mean, I listen to Les Brown in the mornings or Jim Rohn, right? That being said, I also believe that, you know, motivation is fickle. It's not reliable. You know, if we rely on taking action, if we rely on motivation to take action every time, we're we'd be doing ourselves a disservice. We're not going to get as far as we want to get to, right? If motivation is what's is the only thing that gets you moving, then that's not going to be enough. So for me, I felt that if I was just known as a motivational speaker, I'd be doing a disservice to the world. That would not be fair to me or to the world, because again, I feel like motivation is fickle. Motivation isn't consistent. So I'm happy to motivate people. I love it. But what I love more than motivating others is teaching them skills that they can take to the world, to the marketplace, and do great things with, right? Think cybersecurity, think leadership. Eventually down the line, I want to retire from my tech career and teach leadership full time. And leadership, teaching, building other leaders, I mean, that affects generations. That affects their whole village. That affects their communities, right? You teach someone how to be an effective leader. You teach them leadership skills. They get a promotion. They get paid more. They can. The sky's the limit, right? And for me, I want to teach leadership far more than motivating others. And yes, we do need people who are motivational speakers that can motivate others and inspire others to action for sure. More importantly, though, we need more leaders in the world who teach others how to be effective, servant-driven leaders.
Can people go online or on social media to learn more about you, to connect with you, see everything that you're up to?
Yeah, folks, I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm on Instagram as Abdi the Speaker, Abdie the Speaker, and then LinkedIn, Abdi Mohamed, Abdi space Mohamed. I post videos on Instagram. I have posts on LinkedIn where I really focus on more of the engineering, more of my cybersecurity career, lessons learned. And my Instagram is more of my thought leadership. I talk about technology as well, but mainly my thought leadership goes on Instagram and highlights of my speaking engagements and what I've been up to. So, and also I'm also competing for a High Rocks challenge that I'm going to be doing in Dallas. Look it up, High Rocks, HYROX, and it's going to be my first High Rocks. I'm excited. Think of it as extreme fitness racing where you're running and lifting
Ah,
and running and lifting. Yeah, that's the easiest
oh
way I can
man.
describe it. Yeah. So
How do you
it's
train?
going
How do
up.
you train for that? I'm curious. How do you train for that?
A lot of running, a lot of
Yeah.
running, a lot of lunges, a lot of
Oh man.
lunges. Yeah, it's not that fun. I'll be honest. The training for it has not been fun at all. Like every time I do a High Rocks workout, but by the way, the people I'm training with, they're doing the pro version. I'm doing the regular, the civilian version. You know,
Okay.
they're like
So
they're like
there's
Captain
levels to
America.
it. Yeah, I
Yeah, they're
got you.
like Black Panther and Captain America, right? Elite human conditioning, Bruce Wayne. I'm doing the civilian version. And so me training with them, that's helped me get my conditioning up to compete at that level. So I'm excited. I'll report back my findings on how well I do. And
I love
yeah,
it.
it's gonna be on the Instagram.
I love it. Please do. Please report back. The last one for you. What does it mean to you to unlock the highest version of self?
To unlock the highest version of self, what does that mean to me? That means, for me, that means having everything aligned, as in, your values, you know who you are, you know what you value, you know where your North Star is, and you're living in complete accordance to that or to the best of your ability.
I love that.
That's yeah, that's what that means. And most of us, we're all on our journeys to be more aligned with what we truly value. But I believe that the more you're aligned with that, yeah, I think that's the golden answer for me. Yeah.
I love it, Abdi. Thank you so much for your time and for all you listening. I'll see you guys next time. All right. Peace out.